My name's Christiana Morales. I'm the Director of Self-Determination Program here at Disability Voices United. My co-trainer is Tina Ewing-Wilson. She is our outreach specialist and our house expert because she has been in the program longer than I think anybody else that I know. Tina, 21 years?
23. I started in 2001. So,
Oh my goodness. So if you don't know, there was a pilot program before. So she is our expert. Also with us today is Judy Mark, our amazing president. Judy, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Um, I'm Judy Mark. I'm president of Disability Voices United. I'm so happy to have you all here. Super excited about this new set of trainings that DVU is going to be doing, led by Christiana and Tina. Can I say something first before we get started? Okay. This is nothing to do with the self-determination program training you're about to have. I just wanted to let everybody know, and I'm going to put it in the chat in a second, that DVU is really trying to organize the developmental disability community to fight against the potential cuts to Medicaid coming from the US Congress and the White House. For those of you who haven't been following this issue, last night, the US House of Representatives, so members of Congress, voted in favor of a budget framework that will cut trillions of dollars from the federal budget. And the largest amount of cuts need to come from what's called the Health and Human Services area, which is Medicaid, Medicare, and some other issues. Now, the president and the Congress have absolutely promised they're not going to cut Medicare. Medicare is the health insurance for people over the age of 65, sometimes 67. They said they're not going to touch it. So where is almost all the entire rest of the money in that budget going to come from? It's the Medicaid program. Now, for those of you who don't know what Medicaid is the federal government's healthcare and services programs, and they pay for lots of things. They match the dollars that the state of California spends on Medi-Cal. So that's your health insurance. So any of you who are on Medi-Cal, there is a very big possibility that that we will have significant cuts, and that could look like many different things, like work requirements to be on Medi-Cal. That even for people with disabilities, a full-time work requirement. It could be a what's called a block grant to the state, where they will cap the amount of money they give to the state, and us being the largest state, if they cap it at a certain level, that would require major cuts. What else does Medicaid pay for? It also pays for regional center services. So that includes self-determination program services, because they are regional center services. So what it would mean in the traditional system is they may cut the number of hours people get in personal assistance hours, or maybe they would fund fewer supported living hours. And so or they may cut out wholesale types of services. So we may lose our social rep services again, or we may cut respite completely. So what does that mean? So you're going to hear, if you continue in this program, that self-determination program budgets are based on the services you would get in the traditional system. So if those services are cut, that means that our budgets will be cut as well. And so we need to do everything we can to fight this. And so DVU is right now working with other organizations across the state, disability rights organizations, trade unions, civil rights groups, aging groups like the Alzheimer's Association and AARP, because everybody's going to be affected by this. And we're working with all of these other groups to collect stories about how Medicaid cuts could impact our lives. But mostly what we're doing is we're focusing on 3 areas in the state. And I will put those areas also in the chat, but we're looking at a part of sort of northern Orange County, the Tustin Fullerton area. We're looking at eastern San Bernardino County, so Yucaipa into Palm Springs and Palm Desert. And we're also looking at parts of Bakersfield into Central California. These are 3 congressional districts that we're targeting to try to get support from those members of Congress. So we're trying to collect lots of information from all of you to get you involved in these, particularly those of you who live in those areas. So I'm going to put more information in the chat. I see somebody, Kate asked about the master plan, and I'll give a very brief update on that. But I think we're going to talk about it a lot more at our SDP Connects, which are the alternate dates of these trainings. So the master plan on developmental services has been going on for the past year. It is going to be finished, or at least the public part of it's going to be finished on March 19th, when a committee of folks that I sit on, that committee as well as many others, will sort of approve a set of recommendations that we will then send to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That those recommendations include lots of things related to the self-determination program. So you should know that we've been working in 5 different work groups, and all of those recommendations are being finalized to open over the next week. And then the final sort of recommendations that are that may have disagreements will be discussed at the March 19th meeting. And all of you are invited to attend either in person if you want to go to Sacramento on March 19th, or it's virtual online as well. So what we're hoping is that even our slightly controversial recommendations still end up in the final master plan. So even if it ends up in the final master plan, by the way, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's going to be a whole process to implement things starting in April, May, June, and we're going to have to be very involved on this. So involved in all of this. So I hope that helps. Please, there's I know that there are master plan meetings coming up. On Friday, there's a work group meeting. There was one yesterday, and then next week there's another work group on Wednesday that Tina sits on. So I really encourage all of you to get involved and have your voice be heard. All right, I'm gonna let go. Stop now because I want to make sure that you all have time to do your training. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Judy, for keeping us up to date on what's going on. It's moving kind of fast, and so it's important everybody knows what's going on in the Congress. We have a couple other announcements, just so that you know. The Ability Expo is going to be this weekend. If you were in the Los Angeles area, it's from March 7th to 9th. DVU is going to be there. We have a table and we're going to be walking around. And so if you happen to be in the area, we'd love to see you there. It's always fun to see people in person. And we're putting the link in the chat if you're interested in attending. We also have a resource fair for Inland Regional Center that's coming up, and we will put the information if you're interested in being a resource provider or you want to attend. That link will be in the chat as well. And then the very last thing, I don't want people to panic too much. There's a lot of information. So you're going to have the links to all the slides, so you don't have to worry about writing anything down. Also, if we have all this information on our website, so go to the sdpresourcecenter.org website, and so you can get all the information that we're getting here as well. So you have lots of places to get the information. And the last place that you can get it is, hold on, let me grab my book. We have a book called Think Outside the Box, which is what this training is based on, the Think Outside the Box book. So if you're interested in that, we have it in English and Spanish. We're working on getting it interpreted into other languages, and it is available on Amazon, and you can find it on our website if you're interested in purchasing that. I try to have all different ways of learning for people. I know I'm a visual learner, but some people are auditory, some people like to read. So we want to make sure we're getting this information out to everyone. Um, so let's get started. Before we start, I want everybody to know that if you are an independent facilitator in the audience and you are currently taking clients, we invite you to please put your information in the chat. If you are looking for an independent facilitator, please feel free, put it into the chat that you're looking for someone and what regional center you work with so they will know. Our goal here is to try to connect people. We don't endorse anybody, so it's still important that you do your due diligence, you interview them, you make sure it's the right person, but we're trying to make sure that people have the ability to connect as well. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. Let me share my screen here. Oh, also, while we're going along, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will answer them towards the end, and we read them out because if we answer them in the chat, they don't get interpreted, so everybody won't be able to hear them. So, but I promise you we will get to all the questions in the chat, and once we finish our presentation, we'll have lots of time for question and answer where you can also raise your hand. So we want to make sure everybody walks away with their questions answered. So let me share my screen and let's get going. Let me turn the chat so I can see it. Here we go. I got to adjust a couple of things so I can see everybody. Here we go. I've got way too many windows open on my computer. Okay, so we're here to talk all about SDP transition supports. So the purpose of this training is for participants, family members who are running their programs. This is not intended to be an independent facilitator training. If you were doing that, it would be much more in-depth. This is intended for family members and for participants. So here's kind of the roadmap. This is on our website as well. So you may or may not at this point have attended an orientation already. If you haven't, go to our website. It has a link to how you find the orientation. You can either attend one through your regional center or through the state council. So now you are here to number 2, finding your transition supports. And we're going to explain even what a transition support is because it's not always clear, right? We use a lot of new terminology in self-determination program. So I want to start then by talking about the principles of self-determination. And I love for Tina to talk about them. And I think they pop up. I think I animated it. We'll see what happens when I click this.
Okay. The first principle is freedom, and that's important to me because it means I get to choose. I have the freedom to choose who I want in my life, what I want to do with my time, who I want to live with, what I want to eat for dinner, things I didn't used to get to choose. It gives me the authority I need to make my program work. It makes me the boss. I no longer do what somebody else tells me to do. I tell someone what I want to do. And that's just very freeing. It makes life better because it puts you in the driver's seat. And that's important. It's taking too long to come up.
Oh, did you not see? So authority is up.
I did. I just did authority.
Oh, sorry.
Responsibility. It gives me responsibility, and that makes me more invested in my own life. So I'm responsible for doing a lot of things. I have to do schedules, and I have to hire people, and I have to decide a lot of things. And responsibility is good because responsibility makes you stronger, and the stronger you get, the better able you are to handle all the crises that come up. And um it means I do a lot, but I benefit from all that work where before I used to fight for everything and didn't actually get what I wanted, and now I do. It means support means I don't have to do this by myself. I have help. I hire a whole team and they do the things with me that are hard for me. Not for me, with me. And that's important because it's my life. I don't want someone else running it. And then confirmation is really important because if no one confirms the fact that I'm the boss, then I'm not the boss. So it's my IF and my head staff and people like Judy and Christiana who confirm to everybody, including me, that I'm the boss. And that's really important because in the very beginning, when you first start self determination, you tend to be a bit timid and like not ready to like think about what you want. I remember when I first started, they asked me, what do you want? And nobody had ever asked me that before. So it actually took me some time to think about what I wanted because what I wanted never mattered before. And so my first year, I didn't really do much. But every year it gets a little bit more actually what I want. And I get to become who I want to be, not what my disability forces me to be, because we find all ways around all those barriers in this self-determination program.
Thanks, Tina. That's such, like, I love when you explain the principles just because it's everything is built on those principles, right? And so we always
Yes.
start from there. So these are the things you're going to learn today. So hopefully when you walk away from this training, you're going to know what transition supports are, what the independent facilitator's role is, how they're paid, how to find one, and who can be paid to be an independent facilitator. So let's start with what are transition supports? So the term transition supports are the people who are going to help you transition into the self-determination program. You are still a traditional system. So we kind of break them up as traditional system and then self-determination program. You are in the traditional system until you switch, the day you switch. So there's no gap into self-determination. So while you are in the process of switching over, you will continue whatever services you currently have. And this person is paid for by the regional center. So don't have anybody, I'll say it probably 500 times today. You do not pay out of pocket for these services. These are
No, no.
all paid for by the regional center. And the people who typically provide these transition support services are called independent facilitators. And so you might hear the term used back and forth, independent facilitator, transition supports, and that's why it can be a little confusing. I made a chart because I am a chart kind of person. And then for short, they're often called IFs. So you might hear somebody say, my IF, or we're looking for an IF. So that they're talking about independent facilitators. Independent facilitator is not, I haven't heard the term used anywhere else. It was a job title created by the self-determination world. So let's talk about what makes a good independent facilitator. And I think the very first number one quality is that they are a good listener, that they are going to, as Tina had said, this is her program. Um, they are not there to take over or to run things. They're there to support you, and they have to be there listening to you. They need to be professional. Uh, what do I mean by professional? It means um, returning calls. It means being on top of things. It means when they're dealing with challenging situations, they act professionally. So I think that's a really important piece is that they act professionally. They provide the
And
information.
it's important that your independent facilitator learn to communicate with you the way you communicate. We all communicate in different ways. My IF understands that I don't like to talk on the phone, so he doesn't make me do that. Most of our interactions are in emails or text messages, and we text a lot.
That is such a great. So they should be adapting to your needs. So it's going
Yes.
to work for you. They should be providing the information for you so you can make the decision. They shouldn't be telling you what to do or how to do it. They should be saying, here are your options, and they can help you get the information that you need so you can make that decision.
Because one of your rights, one of the things people sometimes forget, it's your right to make informed decisions. It is your IF's responsibility to help you understand before you have to make decisions what those decisions might mean for you.
Exactly. Um, what they need to do is they need to be experts in a lot of things. They have to understand the traditional system. They have to understand the self-determination program and the services available in that program. They need to understand generic resources. And what that term means, I dislike the term because it's not clear what that means. A generic resource is a service that is available to everybody else that is publicly funded. And the largest generic resource is the school district for minors. And so other resources that they would need to understand are possibly Social Security, in-home support services, Department of Rehabilitation. So they should know all of these other services because even in the self-determination program, the regional center is the payer of last resort. So they have to understand those other services as well. So I like the term skilled generalist. You're looking for somebody who knows a lot about a lot of things. So what are the qualifications that you're looking for? So right now, there is no license or certification required. However, the law does require they have some sort of training. So there's not a required certification, but you do want somebody who has taken courses in it and have some sort of certificate from a course. So there's not a single one, but they need to have had training. You also are not required to use an independent facilitator. So this is a choice of yours if you want to have one or not. Now, I will kind of highly recommend because the
I
self-determination program um, can be very challenging to figure out. So even if you kind of are very experienced with the regional center, it's nice to have that extra help. But I will also say, we know there's a shortage of independent facilitators right now. And every single regional center has a local volunteer advisory committee for self-determination. And those committees have money that they can spend. And some of them spend them on coaching service. So if you get stuck and you don't have an independent facilitator, or even your independent facilitator is stuck, you can reach out to your regional center advisory committee and see if they have coaching to help you. So you should always have support along your way on this journey. And the independent facilitators need to pay for their own training. Okay.
Independent facilitators also should not ask you to sign a contract in which you promise them if the regional center doesn't pay them, you will. Because you should never pay out of pocket. Even if something goes wrong, the regional center needs to pay them.
So and like I said, Tina and I are probably going to say this about 500 times today. Like, don't pay for don't pay out of pocket for
Yeah.
this. Okay, so here's kind of the process of as you're going into the self-determination program. You're going to start at the left and you're going to be getting a person-centered plan. So these are kind of the three types of services an independent facilitator can offer. Not every independent facilitator offers all of these services. So that's something you will want to ask them if they offer the services. So the first one on the left, which is person-centered planner over here, they can help you create your person-centered plan. The next one is the self-directed supports, and I'm going to go into detail on each one of these. And at the end, we have a chart filled out that you can print out that you will have all the details on these. So the self-directed supports are getting you into the program, all the things that needs to, and then they're actually called independent facilitators once you are in the program when you continue on for ongoing. So these are the three types of services an independent facilitator could offer. So let's go through each one of those and talk about a little bit about what that means. So the first
In
one is, oh, go ahead.
in the pilot project, we actually called them service brokers, and then one day, all of a sudden, they told us we had to call them independent facilitators, and I refused because I said, he isn't an independent facilitator, he's my independence facilitator. And I
There
still
you
call him
go.
that.
We should rename it Independence Facilitator. I like that.
Yes.
So the first, once you pick your transition supports, you can then start getting your person-centered plan done. That's kind of the next step in this process. Our next training is going to be all about person-centered planning. So we'll talk all about it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of what a person-centered plan is or those things in this training. It's just for you to know that that's one of the things that they can offer in order to do person-centered planning. So you should know that person-centered planning has been around for a long time, and it's used in a lot of different areas. So somebody might have person-centered planning experience, but they worked in like employment before, customized employment or education or those kind of things. You need somebody who is a person-centered planner who specifically understands the self-determination program, because this plan is going to be your foundation. They're going to see if you have unmet needs, help you build your budget. You're going to create goals around that. So they really have to understand this system. They have to have training in person-centered planning. So when they turn in the plan, and then turn in their invoice, they will have to show to the regional center that they had some sort of training in personal center planning. They don't need approval from the regional center. So they don't need to be vendored by your regional center. So this first section, the person-centered planner, you can pick who you want. You go ahead and you do your person-centered plan. When it's turned in, they will turn in their invoice, and that's how they will get paid. They can, and I think the next slide will tell you how much they get paid. Um, I will say there's one regional center off the top of my head. West Side does require you to let your service coordinator know beforehand. So I said it wouldn't hurt in any case to let your service coordinator know, hey, I'm working with this person-centered planner or this independent facilitator. Just to cover yourself. The next section of things that the independent facilitator could provide are what's called self-directed supports. So this is you've turned in your person-centered plan, and now you have to come up with the rest of it before you transition into the program. So that's all the rest of those supports. So that means that they can help with your budget meetings, that they can advocate for unmet needs or changes in circumstance. A lot of times, the reason somebody is going into the self-determination program is it's the traditional system services weren't working for them. So they may not have a lot in their budget. They may not have a lot of services to begin with. And so the independent facilitator will help determine this. They're going to make sure that any of those person-centered plan goals that you had get included in your individual program plan, your IPP. They're going to provide information so you can select the right financial management service. I think we're up to 23 financial management services. Each of them have kind of their own strengths, their own ways of doing things. And not everyone works with every regional center. So they will have information about each of the ones that are available to you. When you select a financial management service, there are different models that you can pick. And so they will help you pick the right model um, as you are selecting your financial management service. They're going to help you create that spending plan. They can help you find services that they should be knowledgeable about services in your area and be able to help you kind of identify some of those. They can help you set up those services and hire workers. They also, if you currently have workers that you need to continue, remember we said we don't want that gap between you leaving the traditional system into self-determination. They can make sure all of the people that are going to stay with you are all set up and ready to go on day one. And they're going to make sure that those authorizations are in place. So What does that mean? That's a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to remember. You don't need to remember all of those because your independent facilitator is going to be doing all of these things to help you. So I want you to be aware of what they can do, but you don't have to worry like, I need to know every single one of these steps right now. They are going to help you work through it step by step. And as you do it, it seems like a lot now, but as you do it, kind of what's the thing? How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
One time.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we look at that transition is you'll just go each step as you go and you will arrive. So the question is, how do you set up those self-directed supports? So we explain for the person-centered plan, you can kind of just pick your planner and you can just get started. With self-directed supports, this is actually a service through your regional center. So you would set it up the same way you would ask for any other service. You would let your service coordinator know you're transitioning into self-determination program. This is the person I selected. This is the independent facilitator I selected, and they will create an addendum to your IPP to include a new service, the same as you did any other service. They have a set amount of hours. You can have up to 40 hours. There are exceptions to that. If you need additional, you can ask for additional, but the typical is up to 40 hours. And the rate is somewhere around $50. It's set based on regional center. So, but it's all around the $50 range. And they are going to work with you until you transition into the self-determination program under this funding. So that was our number two, the self-directed supports. Now, the third thing that an independent facilitator can provide for you is you've transitioned into self-determination program. Do you need ongoing support? Are you going to continue to need assistance? So there are a couple, you are not required to continue using an independent facilitator. Um, so you're going to decide, am I going to need ongoing support? So some of the things you might want to think about is, am I going to need help making changes to the spending plan? Am I going to need help finding additional services? Every year you have to renew your budget and spending plan. And so am I going to need help doing that? I like to recommend that if you are new to the program, planning to have your independence facilitator help you at least in that first year is very helpful. That way you kind of have the whole process down once you've done it. If you have the plan on taking it over yourself after that, I think it's kind of a good idea to have that support that first year. Um,
I've been doing it for 23 years though, and I personally couldn't do this without my IF. He helps me with too many things. There's so many things that can go wrong that need fixing, like major life changes. You can rewrite your person-centered plan and stuff. And honestly, every year we go in and we adjust the person-centered plan every year because it's a living document just like you are. And so it changes with you. So don't expect to just write your person-centered plan one time and have it be forever. Because your life isn't static. Your life will change. Your wants and needs will change as you grow into self-determination. And as you start wanting to do more things, you want an IF that can help you do that. And lately it seems like the regional centers are fighting everything, and I couldn't do appeals without my IF. I just couldn't. So I strongly encourage you to consider uh, using an IF.
Also, um, as anybody knows who's tried to plan for an entire year, things are going to change in your
Oh yeah.
spending plan. So you may need to move money around. You do need to track. Remember, we talked about the principles of you have the freedom, but you also have responsibility with it. So you need to be tracking how much is being spent, making sure you're staying on budget. If you need assistance doing that, those are the kind of things that you can consider. So
That's one of the big things my IF does because I don't do math and I have like 9 employees and 24-hour care. So there's a lot of financial things to keep track of, and without the IF there's no way I could do it. I would get frustrated and give up.
So I kind of filled in a little bit of the chart. You have the access to all of these slides. I put all the info in because I like a good chart with all the information. I didn't want to attack you with it at the beginning, but this is all the things we just talked about in one chart, one location for you to kind of go through if you ever kind of are like, what, who got paid how many hours and what do they do? So these are the three types of services independent facilitators can um, provide. Now, remember, not all independent facilitators provide all three. So, and you don't have to use just one. You could have somebody who doesn't do ongoing services, but they do the first two, person-centered planning and self-directed support. So it really kind of is up to you to pick. Um, Maybe you have somebody who's local in your area who's great with organizing your services, but somebody else that's better at negotiating your budget. That's absolutely fine. You can use whoever you want. Now,
You need to ask them though, because I heard recently that there are some people that are refusing to take clients who already have a person-centered plan. That doesn't really make sense to me. But some of them want to write the person-centered plan and then continue on. But I mean, that makes it really hard. You may not want to be with the same IF forever. I mean, people die, people move on and change careers, and um, so I don't understand why they're doing that since you pretty much can rewrite it every year. Um, so just talk to them because it's important to talk to them no matter what. Communication's key in this program.
and when I thought about the things to consider, I thought a lot about Tina and her relationship with her independent facilitator. And that kind of guided me as I've thought about the things. And the number one, first thing on the list is this is somebody that you trust. This is somebody that is going to, if especially if they're doing your person-centered plan, but all along the way, this is somebody that you get to pick and that you should feel like they are there to support you. So if you ever feel like either they're pressuring you or any of those things, then they're probably not a good fit for you. So you want to
Mm-mm.
have somebody that you feel that you trust, that you click with, and that you want to make sure that this person is going to give you a clear contract of what services they provide and they do not provide. So it needs to be very clear for you because we said there's those three options. So you know very clearly what they provide in that contract, as Tina had said, there should not be things like they're charging for hours they don't work. That they cannot charge for hours they do not work. So if they have something where they have a set amount of month hours per month, but they didn't help you in that month, they cannot charge you if they didn't help you in that month. They cannot just say we're going to charge you a percentage of your overall budget. These are provide hours that they provide. They should charge you an hourly rate, and so you should know what that hourly rate is. So you always have the ability to know how much you're spending on these services.
Yeah, it should be pretty well itemized in their your agreement. Like, for example, my IF tells me exactly how much he's going to charge for when we renew the plan every year, exactly how much he's going to charge me. You can actually choose whether you're doing hourly or whether you're doing like a monthly fee, but that's not something you always figure out right away. Like me and my app, we have it figured out to a monthly fee because he doesn't want to charge me for every time I call him and every time we text because we do that a lot because there's so much going on. So he charges me a flat fee a month and then it doesn't matter how many times I call him. But if you're not going to call them that often, you're going to want it to be on an hourly basis. So you have to figure that stuff out. So get an IF that's going to work with you and talk to you and be open to things changing because nothing is static in this program. Everything changes, and that's a good thing.
The other thing that I hadn't mentioned, which is really important, is when you are in the self-determination program, when they become independent facilitators, there is no set rate. So we talked about the $50 set rate when you're transitioning in, and that's what the regional center pays. When you go into the program, you negotiate the rate with them. There is no set rate. So you need to talk about the rate. You need to kind of agree on what that's going to be. Um, you also want to make sure they're the right person for the job. So perhaps uh, you could have somebody who manages your staff that's another staff person that might be cheaper than an independent facilitator. Independent facilitators, you are paying for that expertise. Remember, we talked about they have to be generalized specialists. They need to be able to advocate. They need to know all of those things. So kind of make sure that you've got the right person for the job. And so you're going to negotiate that rate, and they will not increase your budget to pay for this. So as you're looking at your spending plan, you have to figure out, well, what can I afford in this? So again, as we said, this is a regional center service. Even in once you're in the self-determination program, they should never be asking you to pay. As Tina said, if they say, hey, if in their contract it says something like, well, if the financial management service doesn't pay me, then you are going to be responsible for this, I wouldn't agree to that contract. If they said something like, there is a cost for you to leave me to go to another, if you want to leave and go to another another independent facilitator, I wouldn't agree to that contract. There should not be a cost. This is you both have the ability to work together or not work together at any point. Um, they should be treating you like you are the client.
You're the
That's
boss.
you are the
You're not just the
boss.
client, you're the boss. And
Yes.
in fact, my IF's primary responsibility with me is he helps my staff understand that.
Yes.
They don't work for him, they work for me. And he doesn't do any like stuff like that, but he does. We do have a like we hold a staff meeting sometimes, not every time, but sometimes when he comes to visit, because he helps me with that. And it helps because we all make the plan together. We have a planning meeting and all the staff are there, then everybody's on the same page. And like sometimes he'll help me understand things that have to do with business because he's been working with staff forever. And like if I don't know how to deal with somebody that's upset me, I go to him. But I also have a person who's my what we call an administrative assistant, and she helps me with the every day-to-day stuff. Like she helps me with doing scheduling and stuff like that because Doug doesn't have time to do all that.
Um, we kind of talked before about the idea that they are providing you the information so you can make those decisions. Um, They should also make sure that you have access to all of your documents in an editable form. So this is your information. These are your documents. So you should be able so your person-centered plan, you should have a copy of that. Your spending plans, you should have a copy of those. So that's really important. And then we talked about the rate, the reasonable rate and what you can afford. Um, so, remember, they're not increasing your budget for this. So you do want to look at your overall and figure out, okay, all of our needs are met, and here's what we have that we can spend on these services. So it is really important to keep this into consideration as you are thinking about this. Um, there are people who cannot be a paid independent facilitator. And so a parent of a minor can do the independent facilitation work for them, but they cannot be paid. Um, the spouse of a participant cannot be a paid independent facilitator. Service coordinators can act in the role, and we're going to talk about in the next slide what their role could be. They cannot be paid kind of separately as an independent facilitator, or somebody who provides another service to you. So you couldn't have, like, if you had like an SLS agency or somebody that works with you or a respite person, if they're getting paid as that, they couldn't also provide independent facility.
Or a caregiver.
Exactly. A caregiver that you pay couldn't be paid to be your independent facilitator. So IFs can't be billing in multiple ways on your. Okay. So let's talk about the, you can your service coordinator can kind of act as an independent facilitator. Um, I want to kind of point out that our service coordinators Most of them have 70 clients. So I have a really great relationship with my son's service coordinator. There is no way she would have time to do the things that would need to be done for self-determination. I'll also
Honestly, I don't even understand why they allow it because it's such a huge conflict of interest because they're going to be looking out for the regional center, not for you.
well, and I'll say that I've heard a few people have done it this way. It We have over 400,000 people in regional center services. There are about just a little over 6,000 in self-determination program. So the chance that your service coordinator has done worked with somebody in self-determination program, they may have never done this before. So that's kind of something to think about, that they may not have experience with this program. Um, the service coordinators, they can lead a person-centered plan. The new individual program plan has a person-centered plan aspect to it, but I will say there's no way they can spend the time with you that person-centered planners do. Person-centered planners, they can bill up to $1,000. It takes hours and a lot of planning and a lot of discussions and a lot of just getting to know each other. I'll also say that in some communities, there isn't a lot of trust between the families and the service coordinators, and that person-centered planner is probably the highest level of trust. You're sharing your hopes and dreams with them. So they may not be the right person. They can help you develop the IPP and the budget and the spending plan. Um, and they can help kind of give you the community resources, meaning they can only provide the ones that are vendored with them. Remember, we are not required to use vendored resources. They are really not going to be able to tell you who the local karate studio is that a lot of people enjoy in your area or those kind of things. They're kind of limited to what they know. So they are not able to help you find services out in the community. They cannot negotiate rates for you. Um, and they can't recommend a financial management service because they have to be unbiased. And we kind of talked about the not being able to create that detailed person-centered plan for you. Okay, now the million-dollar question. How do I find an independent facilitator? Um, the first thing is that there are lists. There are a couple places that will tell you that you can go to. But the first thing is know that you're going to want to interview them. And so if you go to the link on here, or it's on our website, we have a list of questions that you might want to ask an independent facilitator as you're interviewing them. Um, I know that when I was kind of starting out in this, I didn't even know what to ask. I didn't know what I was looking for. So we kind of have a list of questions that you can look into. Um, we had already mentioned that not all of them offer all of the services, so figure out kind of which services you need, what level you're going to need. Sometimes I have met parents that are amazing advocates and they can do a good chunk of that supported, self-directed part on their own, but they need somebody to ask questions along the way. So maybe you don't need somebody who will do it for you, but you just need to ask. So kind of figure out what level of support you're going to need and then ask the people you're interviewing, you know, kind of figure out what part you're going to need. There is currently a site that has listings of independent facilitators that you can look at. It's called the CaliforniaSDPnetwork.org. Um, will have a provider site that's coming up very soon, but it hasn't been released yet. And there is also on our website, Los Angeles State Council has a list of independent facilitators. It was organized by the Los Angeles State Council, but most of those independent facilitators work at a lot all over the state. So it's, even though it says an LA list, there's another place for you to go. There are other ways I think that might be good. Ask other people in the self-determination program. Do you have an independent facilitator? Do you like them? Word of mouth is a great way to find independent facilitators. Check that state council. SCDD is the State Council of Developmental disabilities? I always forget what the acronym stands for. Um,
I think it's the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, but I'm not absolutely positive on that either.
there
Yes,
you go.
that's right.
Thanks, Judy. Um, they have that list, the website list. Go to your local volunteer advisory committee meetings. If you go to our website, it has a list of every single regional center's advisory committee meetings. A lot of times independent facilitators show up there, so you can meet them through that. You can go there, say, hey, I'm looking for somebody. They also offer sometimes support groups or the coaching or those kind of things. And so or it's another great place to meet another participant or family member and you can ask them, hey, do you have an independent facilitator you like? And the other thing is, come join our events. We will always invite people, and if you want to post in our chat anytime, hey, I'm looking for an independent facilitator. So there's, kind of lots of ideas of ways for you to go and find one. As we said, there's more information for you on that resourcecenter.org site. We have a step-by-step walkthrough for you, and also our books, and you can purchase them on Amazon. And that wraps up everything that I could possibly think to share with you about independent facilitators. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to answer everybody's questions now. I'm going to start with Natalie at 456 asked, when do I start looking into finding an independent facilitator? That's such a great question. It can take a little bit of time. And so I would say right now, whenever you're ready to start looking, um, start the process. So you can go ahead and start looking right away. Go do your orientation too. So you're going to want to do your orientation. Um, oh, go ahead, Judy.
So I was one of the people that got the self-determination law passed. And right afterwards, we started doing trainings of independent facilitators. And I have to tell you that people kept clamoring for lists. They're like, I need lists of independent facilitators. I need lists of providers. And I have resisted this for many years. Because the whole point of self-determination is to not choose people off of a list. So here's my advice, even though DVU is about to launch a website with lists on it, you don't have to choose somebody off of our site, and you don't have to choose somebody off of the site of the other groups that have lists. There are some amazing people out there who can learn some of the details about the self-determination program, but who know you. Like, I've known people who had great success with getting like a special educator, like a special education teacher who's maybe retired, but who knows you really well, to come in, learn some of the details about the SDP, but is the really right person to do your person-centered plan because they know you. The other thing I should say is that I do not support people being the independent facilitator of their own child when it comes to person-centered planning. Like, if you are a parent and you want to create the spending plan and budget based on the person-centered plan, I don't have a problem with that. It is the person-centered plan that should not be in any way written or conducted by the parent. I have had parents say to me, I know my kid better than anybody else, and I'm going to write the plan because I know everything he wants. It's like, no, you don't. But maybe you do know him better than other people, but you don't know him better than himself. And so I know everything there is possible to know about person-centered planning. And I hired an independent facilitator to conduct my son's plan because it was about him. It wasn't about me and my perception of what he wants or wants to be in his life. So strongly, strongly urge parents to not conduct the plan for your child, to find someone to do it. And there are plenty of excellent people out there who can do it. So that's my little 2 cents.
Judy, I'll say I'm guilty of same thing. I know my son better than anybody else. My son actually said, "No, you don't." And so you gotta love my son. He's great. Um,
Well, and the reality is, your kids aren't going to tell you everything where they might tell someone else. Because your kids want your approval so bad, or they don't want to know what you want because they want to be individuals. So you have to give them space and let them grow into self determination too.
Yeah. Also, a word to parents. There is going to be at least one time, if not many times during the person-centered planning meeting that you're going to feel uncomfortable. And if you ended the day of the person-centered plan and you felt great the whole time, then it wasn't really person-centered. The first time my son did had his person-centered plan was even before the self-determination program law existed or got passed. He was 15, and the people doing the plan started talking about what his hopes and dreams are. And my son requires a lot of support. And he said things like, I want to go to Tokyo Disneyland. Like that became his perseveration about going to Tokyo Disneyland. And they're like, well, how are you going to talk to people there? And he goes, I'm going to learn Japanese. So they went on this whole tangent about him taking Japanese lessons. And my husband and I were like, we just want him to learn to wipe his butt after going to the bathroom. Like that's our priority, right? But here they are on this tangent about learning Japanese. And I felt really annoyed and uncomfortable. And afterwards, I was just like, when I gained composure, I was like, that was amazing. Like, that was truly amazing. I got to hear unfiltered what my son's hopes and dreams are. And, we still need to work. To this day, my son has not made it to Tokyo Disneyland, and he still cannot wipe himself well. But and now he's 28. But it is like we have a plan by October. We're taking him to Tokyo Disneyland. So it's like these are things that are our dreams. He does not know Japanese, but it's okay. And everybody has dreams. I was going to be a Broadway star when I was 18 years old. That did not happen. But it's like these are things that are okay, right? And so parents, step back, know that your son or daughter, no matter how they communicate, will be able to communicate what they want and what they hope for in their lives.
well, and also I think a lot of times, could you, Judy, you want to talk about what a person-centered plan would be for a minor, for the littles? I like that term.
Yeah. I mean, I really believe that when you're talking about small children, it's not a person-centered plan, it's a family-centered plan. So what you should do is think about if your child didn't have a disability, but they were 5 years old, they wouldn't be making a lot of choices in their lives, right? Like they wouldn't be deciding what they're doing every day. Like, I don't like school, so I'm not going to go to kindergarten. Like that's a neurotypical or a non-disabled 5-year-old doesn't have that much choice and control over their lives. But as a child without a disability grows and goes to middle school and then into high school, they are starting to make a lot of their own decisions. And so that's when you need to step back as a parent to say, okay, this is no longer a family centered plan. This is becoming more of a person centered plan. And they can start to direct their own planning process as well as their own lives. So just, think about it. It's kind of hard, but I know being the most important thing about parents is letting go, and especially hard when you have a child with a disability.
Judy and I are not throwing stones in a glass house. We both have experienced this. We have both had to, my intention is that my son can advocate for himself and he can make decisions on his own, and that comes from practicing and from making these decisions over time and being able to say, no mom, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And so we want to make sure that he has as much opportunity to do this, because unfortunately I will not be here forever. As much as I would like to be to be there for him, we kind of have to plan for that future. um, Becky C at 512 said, is there any kind of oversight for IFs? Well, Becky, you have the $1 million question here. So I will say there is currently no oversight where somebody like would lose a licensure or certificate or anything like that. The oversight comes from you guys. you people have the authority to hire and to let them go.
Higher.
So if this is the wrong person for you, then you let them go. And this is really the first kind of self-determined thing that you do in this whole process is finding that person and hiring them and kind of taking that responsibility over, oh wait, maybe this isn't the right person, or going through a few before you find that right person, I think
I think the same thing is true with all of your staff in the self-determination program. In the beginning, like you're afraid, like you're not sure what to do, and then after a while you figure out, you know what? It's not okay for you to do that. And you learn to say that. You learn to speak up. Sometimes I'll say, you can't do that and I don't like it. Don't do that again. And they say they're sorry and everything goes on. And sometimes you say, you can't do that and I don't like that. And they say, well, then I don't want to work for you. And you say, bye. I'll find someone who does because it's my house and I don't want it done like that.
I love the going back to what Tina said originally. With that freedom and authority comes the responsibility piece. So it's really that kind of those principles of self-determination. I think Sandra had her hand up and it went down. Sandra, did you still have a question? I'm not sure. Like her name went away, but oh, there you go. Go ahead, Sandra.
Sandra. I just wanted to jump on the person-centered planning bandwagon about how parents, as much as you can, you need to step back. And over the years, in the small circles that I've been in, I've kind of given the same speech that Judy just gave, one parent at a time. And finally, I developed a presentation that I was able to give at the Supported Life Conference last October, and it was pretty well received. And I think for a lot of us, if we've been in the system of receiving services for our people for a while in the school system, receiving services from regional center, there's this implication that the parent is responsible for the outcome. And we kind of just absorb that without realizing that that's what's happening. And it's really difficult for us to, as parents, to let that go. So, um, it's kind of hard to let it go and let go of the I'm not responsible for this person's outcome. They get to decide what their potential is, what they want to do. When I hear parents say, my kid sits on the couch all day, and I'm like, and how is that a bad thing? If that's what they want to do, who are you to say they have to do something different? So when that person is able to make their own person-centered plan and they're supported regardless of what the choice is, they eventually get off the couch. Right? So, but they have to build confidence in the parent or the provider that that provider is their cheerleader no matter what. And it takes a while, and it takes a lot of thinking on the parent's part, some work on the parent's part, maybe looking at their own um what's the word I want? Implicit biases and ableism and various other things that come along with it. There's some good reading to do. Maybe the first book that comes to mind is Codependent No More. I see you chuckling, Tina. So so because because our Western culture is a lot of I'm not okay if I don't think you're okay. So, and then the last part is with my own sons, one is served by regional center and the other one could be and chooses not to be, is I start from what would be happening if I wasn't here. And we work backwards. And it takes a lot more work, but the reward is so worth it. to see your loved ones, regardless of if they're served by a regional center or not, or in the self-determination program, really find their own self and become that person they want to be when they're not trying to meet the moving goalposts of expectations of other people.
One
Sandra,
of the first things that I had to fight for in self determination was the right to fail. My family did not want me to go into the self determination program pilot because they thought that I couldn't do it. They didn't think that I might have a chance, so they didn't want to give me the right to choose or the right to fail. And you know what? I have the right to fail. That's how I learn. No, I didn't get everything right from the start. But you know what? My parents made a mistake too. They dumped me in a boarding care when I was in my 20s. That wasn't okay either. I wasn't happy. You know what? I'm happy now. I can have ice cream at midnight if I want it. I can go to the movies if I want to and if I have the money. Like I have a life now. Never had a life before.
I
I
think
love that so much. This is why I love you so much, Tina. And I want to point out a couple of things that Tina said. It's like she said, I have a life now. So I have been training for years about the self-determination program, and I use, with my son's permission, stories of his life. And um, I often have parents come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, what program is your son in? I would love my kid to be in that program." I'm like, "My son's not in a program. My son has a life." It's like, would you go up to a friend and say, "I want your life"? Well, I guess you would. There's some people you would want their life, but they're usually like millionaires or celebrities. But other than that, you don't generally walk up to your next door neighbor and say, "I want your life." So we got to get out of the mindset of programs, right? It, it's interesting because there was a pilot, as you know, of the self-determination program for many years before it went statewide. Tina was in it based on the Kern Regional Center. There were four other regional centers that did this pilot, and one of them was Tri-Counties Regional Center. I saw in the chat that there's somebody here from Tri-Counties. So Tri-Counties had 21 people in the self-determination program in 2018 when this new statewide program went into effect. And all of the people in the pilot were required to move into this new program. The problem is that 20 out of the 21 people at Tri-Counties Regional Center were not living determined lives. They were living in nursing homes. They were going to congregate day programs. They were in work activity programs making sub-minimum wage. They were in no way living self-determined lives, and that regional center should never have allowed that to happen. And so 20 out of 21 of them dropped out of self-determination. And to this day, Tri-Counties is one of the lowest participating regional centers in the self-determination program, because whatever happened there, they never actually believed in the concepts and the principles of self-determination. And they went right back to living these lives where other people tell you what to do every day. You don't get to choose who supports you. And they seem to be okay with it there, which is obviously a problem. So I'll stop because Natalie's got her hand.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, ladies. So I originally asked the question about if I should start, when should I start looking for an IF? I already did the orientation and I'm still a little lost. I've printed out the roadmap and I'm still like, I still have questions. I did reach out to my regional center, but I have not received a response. Do I have to receive a response before I start any other process? I'm just a little lost.
I'm glad you brought that up, and this is what we hear, that after the orientation, people kind of don't know what to do next. So yes, go find your independent facilitator now. You do not need to ask their permission to do it. You can start doing your person-centered plan as soon as you find that independent facilitator.
Your IF can help you navigate all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's why we think that IFs are great, because they're going to help you not feel lost. You're going to know what next step to do. So I would start looking there. Also like I said, look at our website, come to these. So anytime you're stuck, come back. Say, I'm lost again. Tell me what the next step is. And we're happy to be here to help everybody all along the way. So
And come
that's
to SDP Connect, and I get to choose. They're all good programs, and we have fun. We have fun
Mhm.
on here.
We do. It's a safe space. We love people to ask questions, no matter what the question is. So, Glennis at 5:15 said, Christiana, I'm confused. I interviewed and was on the process of hiring the IF, but she told me that she wasn't a vendor with our regional center, and I didn't want to go through the process of applying to be a vendor, and she could only help us with the PCP, but could not do the transition, and we needed to find someone else. Why is that? I didn't go into a lot of explanation because this is a parent training on a participant training on how independent facilitators get paid because it's kind of a mess. And there's, I think, been about 5 directives on it. They keep changing it. So I'm not going to go into the total woods of how they get paid and why they get paid and all of those things. What I will say is that currently, since you don't have to be vendored to do a person-centered plan, most all IFs will do those. To do that second step, which was the helping you from the budget to the transition piece, there's 2 ways they can be paid. One is they can become a vendor of a regional center, um, or they can do something called participant directed services where they don't need to be vendorized, but it's just coming out now, that second option. And so not all of the regional centers have that option available. So that could be why that independent facilitator said, um, your regional center doesn't have that other option and I'm not vendored with them yet. So this is a case where if you really hit it off with that person, you could potentially go ahead and get your person-centered plan started. As Tina said, some independent facilitators prefer to be the one who does the whole process, but that's not all of them. Some of them are happy to take up where you left off. So it kind of really depends. So hopefully that answered Glynis's question.
I personally wouldn't hire an IF if they're vendored with the regional center because I want my IF to work for me, not the regional center. I don't trust my regional center at all. We fight for everything.
Renee, go ahead.
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Hey there, everybody. This has been super helpful and really informative. And I just really appreciate this meeting. I'm curious, why is it so hard to understand what this process is? Like, is it a deliberate thing? My husband.
Best kept secret. Best kept secret. A lot of the service coordinators are afraid that self-determination will destroy their jobs. It won't. They're a necessary part of self-determination, but they've always fought it. That's why I actually had to go to a different regional center because I wanted to be in the pilot. So they let me come back when I after it went statewide. But you know what's funny? What's really funny to me? My regional center has an expert in the field and they've never once asked me for help. They've never once asked me to give a training to the staff. They've never asked me to talk to people. They've never asked. It's weird. That's okay. I'd rather work for Judy anyway.
I'd say, Renee, also, um, it's a bureaucracy. It's a bureaucratic system. You're still in the traditional system for that transition part. So is it more difficult than it needs to be? Absolutely. Everything with my son has been more difficult than necessary. That is kind of part of it. We are working really hard to try to make the process easier and simpler. Um, but it is unnecessarily difficult right now, unfortunately. And that is why we said, get that IF who has been doing this for a while to help you navigate it. Um, is it purposeful?
Yes.
Judy says yes.
So let me explain what I mean by purposeful. Are they like trying to screw us over to make it really hard? No, it's not intentional in that way, Renee. I would say that the current regional center system, the traditional system, is incredibly bureaucratic. It's bureaucratic from the top to the bottom. From the, oh, there's your doggy. That's Buddy.
That's my service dog.
It is bureaucratic from the DDS level to the contracts that they have with the regional centers, and then the regional centers have their internal bureaucratic processes, which are different from each other and sometimes even internally different. And so, yes, this is all on purpose. We call it bureaucratizing this program, but I think that there might be some people who are like very intentionally wanting to keep people out of the self-determination program. I think those are a smaller number than the people who just don't understand how to break down bureaucracy. And so one of the things you should know is that DVU had legislation last year to simplify the self-determination program. It passed unanimously throughout the state legislature, but the governor vetoed it. And when the governor and by the way, don't blame Governor Newsom. Governor Newsom doesn't become an expert on every bill that comes on his desk. No governor ever does. They rely on departments to give them advice. So you can, if you're going to blame anybody, blame DDS for telling the governor to veto it. And that's because DDS doesn't want us, DVU, or the legislature telling them what to do. And so they promised that they would fix it, and they have not yet fixed it. And so we have a lot of work to do. All right, I'm going to stop just because we have so many hands raised all of a sudden.
I'm going to hit Florida at 526 as...
Oh, her hand is up, so maybe you could just...
Oh, perfect timing. Okay, go ahead. As she's unmuting, make sure you have your language selected so you can hear the interpretation if you speak English. Florida, go ahead and unmute.
They might have stepped away because they're not unmuting.
Oh, okay. We'll go ahead and leave her hand up, and we'll go to Aparna, and then we'll get back to Florida. We'll make sure we get back to her. Aparna, go ahead and unmute.
I just wanted to share, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm on the local advisory committee for GGRC. And one of the things that I'm actually trying to do is push for plain language. And I don't have a problem disclosing. I'm on the spectrum. I'm on that low support needs side. But whenever I say I need this information, I'm always told, well, it's already there. We're not going to be the end all. And I'm talked down to a lot. And I'm fighting, right? But if people want to reach out to me and tell me, hey, this is what I'd like to see, I can actually have more voices, because I don't think this makes sense. If these people are really capable, then it should be simple to explain. But they're not making it simple. And I don't know why. And they always say they don't have funds. No, there is money. You just don't want to use it. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm going to put my email. Please let me know, because I want this. This has to work for everyone, not just people who have stay-at-home moms or people with high education or high resources. This has to work for everyone at all levels. And so I really am passionate, like Judy, that plain language speaks to me, because if I don't understand it, you've lost me. And if this is supposed to be for me and about me, and you're not speaking to me, then that's not okay. So please reach out to me if you could tell me what your frustrations are, so I can document that, and we can work on really creating a website that helps people understand.
Aparna is amazing, everybody. I love Aparna. Go ahead, Tina.
We've also been trying to ask the DDS through the master plan to do make our language the language that's used. So plain language, we've asked them to make that the primary language, because it's easier to translate to the other languages too.
I see Florida was able to unmute. Go ahead, Florida.
So Florida just put in the chat that there's two people with the same name. So that's why she's probably not responding to you, because that might be somebody else's.
Okay.
Hola.
Go ahead.
Hola, soy Lulu. Tengo mi micrófono prendido. Nomás quería preguntar si podría explicar que hay que transicionar a una familia autodeterminación a en el chat que nuevo para que todas tengamos esta información. Le agradecería. Y algo que también quiero asegurarme que se entienda, porque es algo que está un poco difícil. A los facilitadores no se les asigna un puesto para trabajar en las familias, entonces constantemente mucho, tanto en las veo también escrito en las redes sociales que se dice busca un buen facilitador, busca una persona que haga todas estas cosas, pero desafortunadamente no hay mucho presupuesto, no se puede tener ese presupuesto desde el principio. A muchos se los están usando de los servicios de los clientes y esto es una pena porque entonces ya los clientes no pueden recibir la calidad de servicio que necesitan. Entonces, ¿cómo vamos a abordar estos temas que son importantes para que cualquier facilitador tenga un presupuesto razonable y puedan entrar y puedan ayudar a la familia? Algo que yo decía es las familias latinas contra las familias hispanas contra las familias blancas. Hay una gran diferencia. En las familias hispanas nos enfrentamos con la discriminación, además del hecho que uh, las familias hispanas se encuentran con cero presupuesto, entonces ayudarlas desde cero es mucho más difícil que una familia blanca que tiene y puede hacer la transición más rápidamente. Se trabaja muchísimo tiempo para ayudar a una familia hispana y esto por eso muchos facilitadores no quieren y agregándole la barrera de lo que cada centro regional hace, por eso es que escuchamos, no, si eres de ese centro regional, pues yo no trabajo ahí. Entonces, ayúdenos con un poco más de cómo podemos abordar todo esto.
That is such a great question, and it is absolutely on Disability Voices United's mind. Our mission is around equity and access to these services. And we do know there are not enough Spanish-speaking independent facilitators out there. We also know from data that Latinos get I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so I'm going to have Judy jump in, much less services than other people do. So that means while you're transitioning in, you are probably going to have to argue harder for those budgets to find that equity. What I will say though is, which is a good piece, is while we still have disparity in how many Latinos in the program, once you're in the program, what we are seeing is better equality of budget size, better equality of services, that nobody comes into self-determination with no services. So I do have one positive piece, which I'm hoping is that self-determination with the support of that advocacy and the independent facilitator will start to help to narrow that gap. But I'm sure Judy wants to talk a little bit about the equity piece.
What we know is that in the traditional system, Latinos receive about half the amount of services as whites. And we also know that African Americans receive about a third less services, and Asians, it just depends on the regional center, can be half the amount, or sometimes even they get more than whites. Actually, African Americans in certain regional centers have made huge progress and actually get more than whites in one or two regional centers. So, but Latinos consistently across every regional center receives about half. So if your budget is based on the amount of services you are receiving in the traditional system, you're already starting at a disadvantage if you're Latino. The other thing we should know is that if you look at the statistics of how many people are participating in the self-determination program, whites and Asians have more than their population. Latinos are totally underrepresented, and so are African Americans. So, this is a really big issue of equity, and we talk about this a lot at DVU. And we believe that if the program is made much more simple, it will help everybody. It will help immigrants, people who speak languages other than English. It will help self-advocate adults who don't have family involved in their lives. It will help working parents who don't have time to quit their job to get their kid into the SDP. It will help everybody. It will create equity on so many different levels if we simplify the program. So that is a major goal. If you feel like it, come to our SDP Connect meetings, which is the alternate Wednesdays, because that is where we talk about things like these advocacy pieces. We talk about that more. This is really more basic stuff, like how do you get in the program?
Leslie at 526 said the IF we had was the only one she could find that was available. Evidently, they will only do the pre-self-determination process, and it's a different department for after you were in the self-determination program. It's not the same person. And once in the self-determination program, the new IF's fee is quite expensive, $450 to $960 per month. I was hesitant to use them for that reason, but now I will have to look for another one. Curious if that is a standard normal fee or if that is excessive.
There's no standard normal fee. It's based on each individual person, but I can give you an example. My IF, who I've worked with for many, many years, and he knows how much I contact him, doesn't charge an hourly rate for me. He probably does for his others. For me, he charges $500 per month, and he more than earns that. And then he charges an additional fee when we do the plan, or when the regional center and FMS require us to redo the spending plan.
So Leslie, what I would say is that what you can only pay for what you can afford. So look at your budget, look at your spending plan and say, can we afford that amount? And if not, then I would say it's excessive, right? That find somebody else who would be willing to do it for less. The not willing to do different, that's the part of not doing all of those three parts is one of those things we said when you're interviewing, not all independent facilitators do all three of those roles. So that's not too unusual. So for that fee, if you are saying you're hesitating to do it, I would say there's probably a good reason. Trust your instincts, and find somebody that you feel comfortable with the rate that you're paying. So we're getting close to the end of time. So I want to go through the last people with their hands raised. Faith, go ahead.
Hi. I want to make sure I'm understanding it. So with an IF, do they have to be vendored? Well, okay, I'm with Tri-Counties, and I thought my understanding was that they have to be vendored with the regional center. Is that correct?
They do not have to be vendored with the regional center. So there is an alternative, which is they can be provide services through participant directed supports. Now, whether Tri-County has it set up yet or not could be the issue, right? So that could be where you're running into. And what you'll hear people say, the term is 099. So if somebody says I'm 099, that means they're vendored with the regional center. So I know it's an odd term, but that's what you might hear people say.
Okay, because we had our first meeting with the IF yesterday, and my son's regional center coordinator, I think we're going to be her first experience with self-determination. And then I learned yesterday with the IF that they have set us up with, that if the person we are going to be their first person as well. So I'm like, oh my God.
So your regional
I
center
guess I need to
set you up with an IF?
Yeah, they said, well, NeuroNav.
You are not required to
Yeah.
use so remember, this is the person you get to pick. So you aren't required to use them. Yeah, you get to choose them.
You get to choose. That's the whole concept
Okay.
of self-determination. I get to choose.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know
Okay.
we have to end right now.
Okay.
The last piece of advice, if anybody gives you a contract that you have to sign from an IF and they are asking you for money out of your pocket, you immediately report them to the SDP ombudsperson. Like, that is illegal. It is against policy. We are hearing that it is still happening today. You are not in any way financially responsible to pay the IF. So please, please don't do that. It's 6 o'clock, so I don't know if you need to-
Exactly. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry that we missed the last three hands. We have to end on time for our amazing interpreters. Thank you so much for interpreting. We appreciate you so much. We hope that you will come to our next training next month, which is going to be all about person-centered plans. And you know we have lots to talk about for that, so I'm excited to see that. Thank you all so much for coming, and we will see you next month.